My parents threw me out after I dropped out of college. I struggled for years, but eventually got back on my feet. Can you imagine being told, point blank, that you have 24 hours to pack your bags and get out of your own home by your own parents? That's what happened to me. They tossed me out because I dared to challenge their perfect plan for my life. But what they didn't know was that years later, I'd come back and secretly become their landlord. All right, so let's rewind a bit. I was 22, trying to grind through a college degree and working a dead-end job at a grocery store, barely making enough to cover gas. My parents, Tom and Linda, were always breathing down my neck. They had this picture in their heads, this perfect, pristine vision of my future, and they weren't shy about pushing me towards it every single day. They thought they knew better, but man, they had no clue what I actually wanted. One night, at the dinner table classic scene, right? I'm trying to eat this overcooked meatloaf that tasted like cardboard. I was trying to be quiet, not give them any reason to launch into another lecture. But then my dad, with that fake, concerned tone he'd perfected, goes, "How's that business degree going?" My heart slammed against my ribs. My stomach dropped. I knew this moment was coming, but I was never ready. I put my fork down, staring at the pile of peas I'd been pushing around like a 5-year-old. About that, I started, my voice a little shaky. I've been thinking about switching majors. The room went silent, like dead silent. You could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. And that's when I knew I was in for it. Switching majors. My dad practically spat his food out. His face turned this weird shade of red that only ever happens when he's seriously pissed off. "Yeah, I want to switch to computer science," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I felt like I was standing in front of a firing squad. Before I could even finish, my mom jumped in with her usual condescending tone. "Jake, thinking's never been your strong suit," she said with this tight, fake smile like she was making a joke. But we all knew she wasn't. That's how she got her digs in, always wrapped in a fake laugh or a so-called joke. I just sat there, swallowing the anger that was bubbling inside me. I wanted to yell, to tell them they were wrong, but I knew it would just lead to more yelling. And I wasn't in the mood for a full-blown argument. But my dad wasn't done. He slammed his fork down on the table so hard the plates rattled. "Computer science? Are you out of your damn mind? Business is what's going to make you money. You're throwing away your future on some stupid hobby." I tried to explain. "It's not a hobby, Dad. I'm really into it, and I think I could be good at it." "You think," he cut me off again. "Passion doesn't pay the bills, Jake. You're being reckless. You need to think about your future, not just whatever you feel like doing right now." My mom, of course, nodded along, adding fuel to the fire. "You're not a child anymore. You don't just get to play around with your future." That's when it hit me. They didn't care what I wanted. Not one bit. To them, I was just this project they were working on. And any deviation from their grand plan meant I was screwing everything up. They didn't even stop to consider that maybe, just maybe, I knew what was best for me. After dinner, I stormed up to my room, slammed the door shut, and collapsed on my bed. I felt this crushing weight on my chest. I pulled out my phone and called Ashley. She was the only person who got it, who understood what I was going through. "How'd it go?" she asked, knowing damn well how it went. "Like a freaking disaster," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. They totally freaked out when I told them. It was like I just told them I was dropping out to join a circus or something. She sighed. "Jake, you've got to stand up for yourself. This is your life, not theirs. You don't owe them anything." I know, but they're my parents, It's not that easy." "I get it," she said softly. "But you're 22, Jake. You're not a kid anymore. You've got to start living your own life, or they're going to keep running it for you." I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about what she said. She was right. I was an adult now, and it was about time I started acting like one. The next day, I woke up feeling a mix of dread and determination. I had to tell them for real this time. I couldn't just keep letting them decide my life for me. So I walked downstairs, my heart pounding, and found them in the living room watching TV. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaky but firm enough. My dad muted the TV. They both looked at me like they were expecting some big announcement. And in a way, I guess it was. I've made my decision. I'm switching to computer science. My dad's eyes narrowed. No, you're not. I stood my ground this time. Yes, I am. I'm an adult, and this is my choice. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd back off. But then, Mom stood up, crossing her arms. If you're such an adult, then you can support yourself, she said, her voice ice cold. You've got 24 hours to pack your things and get out. I just stood there, frozen. My brain couldn't quite process what she was saying. What? I finally managed. You can't be serious. Oh, we're serious, my dad growled. You want to make your own decisions? Fine, but you're doing it on your own. I don't even remember walking back to my room. I just remember the overwhelming feeling of betrayal, like they'd been waiting for an excuse to kick me out all along. I was their kid, their son, and they were just tossing me out like I meant nothing. I called Mike, my best friend, the second I got back to my room. I didn't even bother to keep my voice steady anymore. Dude, they kicked me out. I choked out, my hands shaking. I don't know what to do. Without missing a beat, Mike replied, Pack your stuff, man. You're staying with me. As I threw my clothes into a duffel bag, it finally hit me. I was homeless. My own parents had thrown me out like I was garbage, but at the same time as messed up. As it sounds, a part of me felt relieved. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be under their control anymore. I was free, but I had no idea what that really meant yet. The next few days were a blur. I was crashing at Mike's tiny one-bedroom apartment, which smelled like old pizza and gym socks. It was cramped, but I had a roof over my head and a friend who wasn't about to ask me to leave. I couldn't complain. I tried to focus on my classes, but it was impossible. Every time I sat down, my brain just drifted off, reminding me I didn't have a real home. My savings were draining fast. I didn't have enough to last. Ashley kept trying to be supportive, but even she couldn't fix the mess I was in. I felt like I was drowning. A few weeks passed, and things didn't get better. My savings hit rock bottom. I couldn't juggle everything anymore. I dropped out of college. It felt like admitting defeat, like I was giving up on everything. I walked out of that dean's office feeling like a complete failure. On my own. No degree. No plan. Barely any money. That night, Ashley called. So, what's the plan now? I don't know, I admitted. Every door is closing in my face. You're not giving up, right? I don't have a choice, I said. I dropped out today. Oh, Jake, she whispered. I'm sorry, but this isn't the end. You'll find something. I know you will. I wanted to believe her, but hope was a luxury I couldn't afford. The only place that would hire me was Sunnyside Diner, a greasy spoon that felt like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. I was flipping burgers covered in grease, while my manager, Earl, barked orders. It wasn't a dream job, but it was something. After about a month, Earl pulled me aside. Kid, you've got a decent work ethic. You interested in picking up some extra hours? He had a buddy who needed a night guard at an office building downtown. Pays better. You in? Yeah, I'm in. Just like that, I was working 2 jobs. Flipping burgers by day, guarding an empty building by night. Sleep became a luxury. I was running on fumes, but I had no choice. This was about survival. Every night, as I sat in that dark, empty office building, staring at the flickering city lights, I couldn't help but wonder how my life had turned out like this. A few months ago, I had plans, dreams. Now I was just trying to get by, one shift at a time. And the worst part, I didn't see a way out. Working 2 jobs was hell. Straight up. The diner was chaotic, the night shift mind-numbing. I was running on 4 hours of sleep, fueled by energy drinks, living out of a beat-up backpack. But at least I had money coming in. Not much, but enough. Mike was relieved I could finally chip in for rent. I didn't want to be a freeloader. Then, out of nowhere, things started to shift. Call it dumb luck, or the universe finally giving me a break. One day at the diner, a customer came in for lunch. As I handed him his change, he glanced at the computer screen I had open behind the register. I'd been working on coding exercises during my break, just trying to stay sharp. The guy raised an eyebrow. "You into coding?" he asked, casual but curious. "Yeah." I nodded, trying not to seem too eager, hoping to make a career out of it eventually. He chuckled. "Well, I might have something for you. My company's looking for entry-level IT guys. Nothing fancy, but it's a start." He handed me his business card. My hands shook as I took it, a tiny shred of hope. That night, exhaustion forgotten, I worked on my resume. I emailed it to him before I could overthink it, then tried not to get my hopes up. A few days passed. Nothing. I figured he was just being nice. But then my phone buzzed. An email from that company. I stared at the screen for a solid minute, too scared to open it. When I finally did, it wasn't a rejection. It was an invitation to interview. I couldn't believe it. I borrowed one of Mike's decent shirts and took the bus. It was a small startup, nothing flashy, but it felt like a whole new world. The guy from the diner, Trevor, greeted me. His boss, Tina, was tough but fair. I was upfront about not having a degree, but showed her the small projects I'd been working on. She asked me to solve a problem on the spot. I panicked, but then remembered all those late nights teaching myself. I took a deep breath and got to work. When I was done, Tina glanced over my shoulder. She didn't say much, just nodded and looked at Trevor. "He's got potential," she said. "Let's give him a shot." I wanted to jump up and scream, but I just sat there trying to play it cool. My heart was about to explode. I started the next week as an entry-level IT guy. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I wasn't flipping burgers or guarding a creepy office building at 3 a.m. I was doing something I loved. Tina and Trevor pushed me to keep learning. Nights were still rough, juggling the startup with a security job. But Ashley stuck with me. She was my rock, always reminding me I was building something for myself. After a few months of grinding, I finally reached a breaking point. I couldn't keep working 2 jobs. I quit the diner. "Good luck, kid," Earl said, a rare moment of sincerity. "You're a hard worker. You'll be fine." Walking out of that diner for the last time felt like a huge weight had lifted. I threw myself into the IT gig, every spare minute learning new skills, taking on projects. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was trying to build something real, something that was mine. There were days I doubted myself, but every time I solved a problem, that spark returned. Slowly, I started to see a future for myself again. Not the one my parents planned, but one I actually wanted. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. A few months into the new job, things started to feel different. I was doing something I enjoyed, not just surviving. One afternoon, Tina walked over. "Jake, I've been watching your work. You've got potential, but you're holding back." I blinked. "Holding back? What do you mean?" "You've got the skills, but you're playing it safe. You're comfortable, and comfort doesn't get you anywhere in this business." She wasn't wrong. I'd been happy to be stable. "If you really want to stand out," she continued, "you need to step it up. Take on projects that scare you a little. That's how you grow." So I took her advice. I volunteered for more complex projects, stuff that scared me a little. I spent weeks on one big client, project late nights, weekends, every spare moment. When I finally submitted it, I felt like I'd run a marathon. Exhausted, but in that good way. A few days later, Tina called me into her office. I was nervous. "Jake, the client loved your work. They're moving forward with everything you suggested." "Really?" I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. She nodded. "You did good. Keep this up and you're going to go far here." I walked out feeling 10 feet tall. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I started to see a future that wasn't just about scraping by, but actually building something real. My relationship with Ashley shifted too. She wasn't just supportive now, she was proud. We'd talk about my projects and she'd truly listen, like she knew I was finally on the path I was meant to be on. "I always knew you'd get here," she said one night. "Maybe not in the way you planned, but you're doing it. You're making it happen." Things really picked up. I was taking on more responsibility, getting better, and people noticed. The money got better too. I quit the security job. I wasn't rolling in cash, but I wasn't worried about my next meal. I was on solid ground. Then, one afternoon, Tina called me into her office again. "Jake, I want to talk to you about your future here," she said, calm but direct. "You've done great work. I think you're ready for more. I want to promote you to a full-time position." Full-time. That was the dream. No more juggling jobs. No more scraping by. This was it. I don't even know what to say, I grinned. Just say yes. And of course I did. Walking out of that office, I felt a massive weight lift. All the stress, the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, it all felt worth it. I'd made it. Not in the way I'd planned, but I'd made it. A few years after that, my life had changed in ways I never imagined. I climbed the IT ladder, built a solid reputation, saved money, and eventually I made a decision that surprised even me. I started my own company. It wasn't easy, but I had this feeling deep down that this was what I was meant to do. Sleepless nights, endless paperwork, constant fear. But I stuck with it. Things started to click. We landed contracts, built a small, solid team. The company took off. After a couple of years, we were pulling in more money than I ever thought possible. I wasn't just making it anymore. I was actually doing really well. I wasn't flipping burgers. I was running my own company. It felt surreal, like someone else's life, but it was mine. I'd built this. Around the time my company really started to take off, Ashley and I began talking about buying a house. We'd been renting for years, and it felt like the right time for something permanent. One day, scrolling through real estate sites, I saw something that made me stop dead. The house where I grew up, the one my parents still lived in. It was listed for sale. I couldn't believe it. I hadn't spoken to them in years. I didn't keep up with their lives. But seeing that house for sale, it hit me in a weird way. I clicked on the listing. Their landlord had decided to sell, and it was a steal compared to other houses in the area. Then, like a light bulb going off, I had this wild idea. I could buy the house. At first, it felt a little petty. I mean, who does that? Who buys their parents' house after they kick them out? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I was in a position to do it, and they didn't know I had money, or that I was even considering buying a house. This could be my chance to take back some control over a situation that had left me feeling powerless for years. So, I called my real estate agent and put in an offer. No hesitation. The price was right, and I had more than enough money to make it happen without breaking a sweat. A few weeks later, the deal closed. Just like that, I was the owner of the house where I spent my childhood. It was mine. Here's where things get interesting. The day after the sale went through, I got a call from the property manager. "The tenants are asking to meet the new owner," he said. "They want to discuss the rent and some issues they've been having." I smiled to myself. This was going to be good. I didn't tell him anything, of course. Just told him to schedule the meeting. The plan was already forming in my head. When the day came, I showed up at the house, parked my car out front, and knocked on the door like I was just some regular landlord. My dad answered. He looked surprised, but he didn't recognize me right away. It had been years. I guess I didn't look like the same kid who left their house with a duffel bag and no real plan. "We're here to meet the landlord," he said, looking confused. "That's me," I replied, stepping inside like I owned the place, which of course I did. He blinked. "Wait, what? You're the landlord?" "Yeah," I said, trying not to laugh. "I bought the place." At that moment, my mom walked in from the living room. When she saw me, her eyes went wide. "Jake," she gasped, "what are you doing here?" I just smiled and leaned against the wall. "Well, I'm your landlord now." The look on their faces was priceless. Speechless, standing there in shock. I could tell they were trying to process the fact that the kid they kicked out all those years ago was now the owner of their house. It felt like some kind of weird justice, but I wasn't there to gloat. I was there to handle business. "So," I said, breaking the awkward silence, "about the rent." They both stared at me, clearly not ready for what was coming. "I'm tripling it," I said, straight-faced. My dad's jaw dropped. "Tripling it? You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I replied. "You see, property values have gone up, and I've got to make sure I'm getting a fair return on my investment. So, yeah, the rent is going up. A lot. My mom tried to reason with me, her voice shaky. Jake, we can't afford that. You know we can't. I shrugged. That's not really my problem. You can either pay the new rent or find somewhere else to live. It's up to you. It was harsh. I know. But I wasn't going to back down. They'd made their choice years ago when they threw me out. And now it was my turn to set the terms. They stood there, stunned, probably realizing they didn't have much of a choice. Their credit was shot. They had no real options. They were stuck. After a few minutes of awkward back and forth, I told them I'd give them some time to figure things out and walked out the door. As I got into my car and drove away, I couldn't help but feel a weird mix of emotions. Part of me was satisfied, maybe even a little vindicated. But another part of me felt empty. I'd done what I set out to do. I'd proven that I wasn't the failure they thought I'd be, that I'd made something of myself despite everything they'd put me through. But as I drove away from that house, I realized that no amount of rent hikes or property ownership could fix the damage that had been done. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about letting go. Still, I wasn't backing down on the rent. They chose their path and I chose mine. And for the first time, my path was truly my own. What would you have done in my position? Did I go too far or was this justified? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your take.